assuming you're still dealing with heat and
Yeah, the
normal,
classic
I
like
guess, somewhat normal stuff,
yeah,
right?
it's like the classic um oh there we go. I lost the feed for a second there. Okay, hopefully we're back now. Anyway,
Only
sorry.
you
Yeah,
with an extra
I'm just
focus
checking on
here.
the YouTube status. It just went black for a second. Yeah, I think the stream crashed or something because it's only got like 20 seconds of footage. So all of our intro and everything is completely lost, everybody. So we had an
Oh, great.
amazing, scintillating conversation about the nature of the weather in Southern California. So you really missed, I think, what is going to be the best part of the episode is old
Yeah.
men talking about weather and shouting at clouds.
And of course, it's all scripted, so maybe we'll put the script up,
That's true. Yeah,
someplace for
I'll
people to
just post the
download and review.
transcript. Yeah, I'll put the transcript.
You
Um,
know. But
anyway, on to things.
yeah,
I don't know. YouTube was doing us a favor, saving us from ourselves by cutting out the
yeah,
weather
yeah.
conversation. So what are we going to be
Yeah.
working on tonight?
I will share a screen. Hopefully, things will be much more chill for us stream wise. I'm gonna work on this post right here.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Warhog coming towards camera and realizing that he has outrun who he is chasing, which is Leon. But so yeah, we did this
Excuse
post
me.
last week, a couple of animation things, and now I'm gonna do this post here.
Gosh darn it. Excuse
And
me. All
we'll go
right.
from there.
Yeah. So we had this conversation on the stream yesterday, or last week rather, about how you did all of the animation of the running towards camera, but I'm sorry. So
Are you gonna sneeze?
I got a sneezing spell. So normal people get hiccups, right? And hiccup, and then they'll sneeze once or twice. Well, I will
Yeah.
hiccup once, but then I'll sneeze for 20 minutes. So I'm
What?
trying to. I've sneezed for 20 minutes before, and that's
Wow.
not hyperbole. I'm not exaggerating. That was
Wow.
yeah. So
Okay.
Anyway, let's hope that that's not what tonight is.
Well, maybe I can
Anyway,
distract you a
so
little bit
we were
as we
talking
go through.
about how you did all the animations, but at least for the sake of the editing, it makes more sense to show that run more, briefer for a briefer period of time, because the funny part
Instead
of
of
that moment
showing.
is that slide, and so the slide is what you're going to be working
Yes.
on tonight.
Yes. This is yeah, exactly. No need to. I mean, we have a lot of extra frames in there, but the animation takes a backseat to editing and
Yeah,
timing and
yeah,
comedic timing. That's what we pretty much how we ended it last week. But it was good because I could talk to you about it and kind of bounce back and forth. Because the animator in me wanted to do it one way, but the editor in me, as I edit on the fly, wanted to do something else, and the editing wins. So that's kind of how we pretty much wrapped it up. But yeah, we'll move on to this now, to this pose. I will start doodling, start drawing stuff, and go from there. But there was something I was going to talk to you about today. I think it was in the news about Mario's voice, right? I
yeah.
mean,
Charles
so
Martinet
he's
has been.
retiring.
I don't know if it's a voluntary retirement or if Nintendo wants to go in a different direction with a Mario voice. But yeah, either way, he is moving on to. I mean, apparently he's going to continue to work with Nintendo as some sort of a. What's the word? They did some official press release, and it was like sort of a Mario outreach or Mario something or other. I don't remember, but
Yeah,
he
he's like a
he's
brand
gonna.
ambassador, right?
Oh, that's what it is, a Mario ambassador, right?
Okay.
And so he's gonna still like go to places and do signings and all that kind of jazz. But in as much as they're going to start giving Mario more of a voice, they're going with someone else. Now, I haven't myself, I didn't notice it, but apparently some people were saying that Mario's voice sounded different in Super Mario Wonder, the new 2D platformer that's coming out. Well,
I
not
would believe the fans in this case.
yeah, not like
You know?
hugely different. And they were also saying that
Yeah.
Wario sounded slightly different too. So, there's been
What?
yeah, well because Charles Martinet does Wario as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean he does all of the Mario characters, and um, and I mean, again, I wasn't paying that close attention to it, so I can't. I need to go back and rewatch the trailers to see if I can tell a difference. Although I got to be honest, at this point, my perspective is tainted. Now that I know, I'm gonna be like listening for it, right? And that's gonna make any differences stand out even more.
Yeah.
So, but and anyway, so yeah, I mean, it's news. I don't really know what to make of it. I mean, I think the joke is that they're gonna hire Chris Pratt to do the voice of Mario now, but I don't see that happening.
Yeah, I hope not. In general, I just hope not. That would not be ideal. Um,
I mean, we have we have spilled many video bits on how bland we both felt Chris Pratt was in the Mario movies. So
he's yeah, safe and bland.
mm-hmm.
So it's kind of yeah. Well, so that's interesting. So maybe yeah, I guess we won't know until the game's released for Wonder. I'll be waiting for you to play it first because I'm not all that excited about it. But I know you are. You
Oh
love
yeah,
you love
yeah.
the Mario franchise, and I know you're looking forward to it. So I'll live off of your excitement of the game. If it even warrants me to go buy it or not, I'm not sure. That type of thing. That's where I'm at with it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's kind of weird. Mario has a weird history with the games that are named after have Mario's name in it. Some are terrific, like Mario 3D World, New Super Mario Brothers. I enjoyed those games a lot. Then you have other games like I don't know, Strikers. I've heard was I didn't go with Strikers. I haven't played it since GameCube, I think. But Mario Strikers was not as well received, for example. Um, there's some games out there that just kind of don't hit that mark for. Yeah, it seems like there's always kind of a really weird way for quality for Mario games.
A lot of it depends on who's doing it too, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
so everybody really loves the first couple of Mario Golf and Mario Tennis games, and both of those series were done
Yeah.
by Camelot Software, right? And I think the more recent entries in the franchise they've been done by other studios, and I don't think they've been as well received. Mario Sluggers and Mario Strikers. Mario Strikers was done, I think, by Left Field Studios. Those are the
Mm-hmm.
same guys who do the Luigi's Mansion games. And, obviously, I mean, Luigi's Mansion 1 was done in-house, but Luigi's Mansion 2 was done by Left Field, and then 3 was also done by Left Field. And I actually didn't like 3. I never even beat it. I really liked 2, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
picked up 3 during the pandemic, so I had nothing to do. And
So
I still
you were
didn't finish
primed
it.
to really like
Yeah.
that game as a
Yeah.
result, right?
And I just didn't. I never. And some people really dig it. I mean, the sound design and the visuals are just phenomenal. But the gameplay, it was a step back from Dark Moon actually. Now they're porting Dark Moon onto the Switch, and they're doing a remake of the first Luigi's Mansion also for the Switch, and they haven't given a release date for either of those, but I don't know. I might be interested in playing one of those two games again, but I don't know that I will spend the money.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, at least with 3 though, I don't know. I got to this. It's funny because I got to this one boss. She was like an ancient Egyptian queen mummy boss character.
Mm-hmm.
And it just was like not a fun boss battle, and I was already kind of waning. My interest was already waning on that game. And then when I got to that boss battle, I'm like, I don't really want to try this boss again. I don't really care what happens after this. So I was like, all right, I'm done with this. And I've spoken to at least 2 other people who that was the point at which they quit the game as well. So it was, So it was like, I mean, admittedly, anecdotally, but it was a sour point in the game. And if you weren't completely bought in, that was a break point for a lot of people. So
yeah, I started playing. So is Dark Moon number 2?
Dark Moon is number 2. Yeah, that was on the 3DS.
Yeah, I started playing that one over the pandemic a little bit too. I thought it was fine.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't played it all the way through yet or anything like that, but it's very, it just feels more, I don't even know what the right word is, but it just feels more video gamey compared to
Mm.
the first one. First one felt like more of a narrative type of story, kind of, but the second one, so far, my impression is you got a lot more sub-level type of
Mm-hmm.
activities to do in the game and collect things or do something. A lot more chores to do in the game, which I don't know. I'm neutral towards it. I think it's I don't I'm new you know I don't think it's bad or good. I just feel like it's a little bit of a different flavor compared to the first one. But that's
Mm-hmm.
again really early impressions of number two. I like it. I don't hate it. But yeah, that's how I feel about it. I'm wondering if I should just play it through on the 3DS and then not bother, playing the port on the Switch. I'm not
Yeah,
sure
I
if
mean,
it's
I
worth
don't.
it for that.
Yeah, I mean, the as far as I'm aware, there's not going to be many changes.
Hmm.
So if you don't mind playing
So
it
it's
on
not
the
like
small screen and the slightly worse graphics,
yeah,
I mean, I don't see any reason why you should abandon it just to
yeah,
rebuy it on the Switch for a game that you weren't
uh,
immediately in love with anyway, right? So,
mm,
I would just continue on in the 3DS version. Um,
yeah,
I mean, honestly, the only one that I would consider is the remake of Luigi's Mansion, um, because I mean, I love that game back in the day when it came out on the
hmm
GameCube. I mean,
it's great.
it was a sleeper hit. I don't know what I was expecting, but I mean, I played through that game 2 or 3 times actually, and that was one of the nice things about it is
Wow.
it was really short. I mean, you could get through the whole thing in like eight
Yeah,
hours, and so
I remember that was some of the. I remember that was some of the complaints, like, "Oh, it's too short." But
I
to
loved it.
me, when I played that game, I played it way past the launch of the GameCube. But when I did play it, it was it really took advantage of the hardware at the time for that GameCube, like the controller, everything. It was a
Mm-hmm.
really solid game. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think it's an underrated, brand or franchise for the Mario universe for sure. Such a. I'm surprised there's not more Luigi's Mansion related stuff out there.
Yeah,
So
just
it's
those
such a
three
solid game.
games, and yeah, and obviously, there's it shows up for, in some form or another, here and there, and little cameo bits like Luigi's special move in Smash Brothers involves the poltergust, and I think that the launch title for the Wii U, Nintendo Land, one of its mini games was Luigi's Mansion inspired, but for the most part, uh, yeah, it's not. It doesn't get a lot of love outside of just those 3 games that have been built for it.
Yeah,
And of
but
course, I mean, the
yeah,
Mario
I mean,
movie did like pay a little bit of an homage to it. You know, when Luigi
yeah,
lands and they do the
yeah,
little theme stinger just right there. It's like, all right, so
yeah,
that was
yeah.
fun that they sort of acknowledged it a little bit. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't really. It is a bit of a black sheep in terms of the Mario franchise.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I didn't like 3 that much, so maybe there's reason for that.
Yeah,
but anyway, but there is like it's right now I'm there's a game I'm addicted to anyway. I don't really have any time for any other game or anything else at all, quite frankly, right now. it's
yeah,
it's just
yeah.
it's like straight crack. I mean, some viewers might, maybe not, I don't know what our demographic spread is, all 4 people. It's this game called Vampire Savior. It came out originally, was a browser game, and then was rebuilt in its own, like, I guess, proprietary engine. Maybe it was done in Unity, I'm not sure. But it was rebuilt as a standalone executable that was released on Steam and mobile devices, and completely went under my radar. But apparently, it's been like a cult classic. I mean, there's an extremely robust and complete fan wiki for this game that I've discovered.
Wow.
And then it got ported to the Switch, and it's been getting stellar reviews, and it cost $5. So I'm like, all right, I'll bite.
Yes.
And it came out last Thursday, and I think I've already put like 10 hours into it, maybe more actually. It's the dumbest game. I mean, it's not dumb as in stupid, dumb as in like just so simple, right? I mean, there's almost no complications. I mean, the core game loop is you go into these dungeons, these basically very very basic simple dungeons, and your whole goal is to avoid mobs and mobs and mobs of enemies while you slowly upgrade your passively executing weapons, right? You don't control the weapons, you don't activate the weapons, they trigger automatically on a cooldown. All you do is you move around and try not to die. That's it. That is the whole game loop. And well, that's not the whole game loop. But so while you're doing this, you're unlocking new characters by completing different objectives and getting money that you can then spend in the shop, right? And so as you complete objectives like survive for X number of minutes or get to X level with X character, right? And so you slowly unlock more and more weapons and more characters and more passive upgrades. And then you can take on harder and harder stages. And so it's the standard like roguelike game loop, right? You know, you're really, really weak the first time you play, but the 20th time you play, you're a god, you know?
Yeah.
But then all the enemies like get more powerful too. But it's really compelling.
How do you upgrade your weapons? Like, what's the point if you can't control them? Where's the stats? Like, how do you just survive and then like your shotgun becomes like a double barrel shotgun and that's it? Like,
to a certain extent. So you can have
work?
up to 6 weapons and 6 passive buffs, basically. There's some ways to cheat it, but at a base level, you can have 6 weapons and 6 passive buffs at per run. And when you get when you select a weapon the first time, it's very weak. So you'll have all of the visuals are very, very much inspired by Castlevania, and they are not subtle about it. But like one of the special abilities you get is a Bible, and it will orbit around you once every 3 seconds, right? Approximately. I'm guessing. I don't have the exact metrics in front of me. And then it's on a cooldown, and then it does it again. And then it's on a cooldown. Well, as you level up, right, you have the option you have of upgrading that, and it'll upgrade its attack power, it'll upgrade blah blah blah, right? But then you can also get these passive buffs that reduce cooltime for all weapons, reduce area of effect of all weapons, reduce base attack power of all weapons, and so you combine the weapons you get with the passive buffs, and so over time. They become more and more powerful as the enemies become more and more powerful. And so it's this race. It's almost like an arms race, right? You versus the mobs. You were trying to level up fast enough to get your weapons strong enough because these mobs keep getting bigger and denser and stronger, right? And, you know, it's I mean, I guess you could say it's kind of like a zombie apocalypse game, right? It's you versus the undead horde, right? Except it's all Castlevania enemies. But it's really compelling. I mean, it's super fun. Eventually, you get so powerful that you kind of break the game. By design, they've set it up so that you can become all-powerful if you want to and just completely break the game. But they allow you to turn on and off all the different buffs and debuffs, so you can, like, you basically have complete control over what your difficulty level is, right? So if you are like me and just really like all the numbers popping on the screen, that's how you get your dopamine rush. Then have at it. Like, just turn everything on, and you can be a god, and you can collect things and unlock things, and we're not going to punish you for that. But if you're like a YouTube streamer or speedrunner or one of these professional gamers, you can like change all the stats to make the game just 10 times more difficult for you, right? And so you really it's a ton of flexibility on how easy or how difficult you make the game for yourself. And I mean, I love the visuals. It's all 16-bit sprite graphics that are reminiscent, or, you know, we're not 16-bit, 16-bit to 32-bit era. They're reminiscent of, like, Castlevania 4 up through Symphony of the Night, right? Really, really cool. I love the character design. The animations are dead simple, but it doesn't matter. You don't really see, after a while, you're not really paying attention to an individual character anyway. But, I mean, it's really fun. I mean, it's way more fun than any game that costs $5 has any right to be. I mean, it's just it goes back to my whole thing. And I mean, I've mentioned this on the stream 100 times. Graphics don't really mean anything as long as they're not getting in the way. What really matters is the gameplay loop, right? What really matters is the fun quotient. Most consumers will go, oh, that's pretty, right? But then if the game is garbage, they're not going to play it. I mean, we talked about this in the case of The Last of Us, where I had friends who watched the show, really loved the show, and then wanted to try the game, and then gave up because the game was so unbelievably unfun, right? It didn't matter how great the story was. It didn't matter how pretty the graphics were. They weren't having fun, and so they quit, right?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, this game cost $5, not 60 or 65 or whatever the going rate is for modern games is these days. It cost $5, and it is 1,000 times, 10,000 times more fun than I had playing The Last of Us.
Yeah.
You know, and
I'm assuming it just scratches a different kind of itch too. I mean, because I love Last of Us, but I'll play this. Just from what you've told me, it sounds like a great game to kind of play through, and it's a completely different flavor.
Oh, it's very, very different. Yeah, I mean, no one is going to confuse The Last of Us with Vampire Survivor. Like, that's not. There's no risk of that. And you're right. I mean, it does scratch a different itch. You know, and if obnoxious stealth mechanics and overwrought crafting systems are your bag, and
then
like unnecessarily graphic, you know, body kills, if that's your bag, then great. Last of Us is right up your alley. But unnecessary crafting mechanics and ham-fisted stealth mechanics is just not really my bag. So no judgment though. No judgment though. You know.
Of course not. Yeah. But it's I think I wonder what is this game considered from everything you're beaming about this game and, you know, fawning over, would you consider this like a near perfect game?
For what it is, yeah. I don't really know how to improve on it. And in fact, it's so complete in its presentation that as I continue to dive deeper into sort of the backstory of this, there's been a bunch of also rants that have started showing up, and the vampire survivor it's becoming kind of the genre. I mean,
it started that, huh?
Yeah, it's a very, very unique gameplay loop. I mean, the gameplay loop in and of itself is not unique, but the way the loop is implemented is it's very different. I mean, it takes bits of a lot of things. You know, you could say that there's like a little bit of the Mushu, I think that's what it's called, style of games like Dynasty Warriors and Hyrule Warriors and that kind of stuff, where it's like one versus many, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's got sort of the rogue like die but get stronger in death mechanics, right? It's got it's got upgrading systems, experience. You've got some RPG kind of mechanics in it, but the individual mechanics, the individual components, and this is what you're always looking for in any entertainment medium. The sum of the parts is greater than the whole, right? And it's a dead simple game. It's burning really, really bright. I can already tell that I'm like hitting my peak on it, right? And I suspect in another week I'll probably be on it. But wow, what a week! What a week of just great fun, great escapism, great distraction. You know. So no complaints.
Really funny.
I mean, it's just for, you know, it's a great game in its own right, money notwithstanding. You know.
Huh. So I don't know if it's fair to make this comparison, but you remember, especially during the pandemic, I started playing Among Us, for example.
Yeah.
That game, like, kind of blew up for a little while.
Yeah.
And I think it still has a following. I think people still play it, but it makes me wonder if this game is kind of in that same kind of, here's a pop-up game that kind of showed up, and now everybody loves it, and then it's just gonna wane and go away.
It could. I mean,
whatever, you know.
Yeah, it could. I don't know. I'm just checking. Release date. Okay, so the original Steam release, I think, looks like it was 2021. So it's been around for a while. Oh no, wait, no, that was the web version was 2021. The Steam version didn't come out until 2022. So it's actually still relatively new. So it found a following pretty quick, because I know Among Us kind of languished in indie purgatory for like years. And then wasn't it
Yeah,
like some random streamer in Brazil and
yeah,
Korea happened to stumble upon it, and then it just
and then it
exploded?
just blew up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it seemed like. I don't remember exactly the origins of the craziness of it, but yeah, I think it is something similar to that. Yeah. So yeah, but I'm definitely gonna pick it up. You convinced me, especially with that price tag of $5. I mean, but see again, Among Us kind of had that same sweet spot. I think it was either free or a relatively cheap game to a point where you can't even remember. I don't remember the price. I think it
Yeah,
was
no, Among Us was
$1.99
like
if
yeah, it
anything.
was super cheap. It was less than $20 for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So it's kind of the same deal, but yeah, it's kind of funny how these small little games, that it gives you hope for humanity with games. Like, when you see these little indie studios kind of doing something random like that and it blows up, that's great. Instead of at this point, I feel like the bigger studios running out of ideas as they pump money into sequels and or franchises that are kind of, a little bit long in the tooth. For example, Assassin's Creed, whatever number they're on, it's not been the same since the Ezio trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's only so much you can do with that mechanic and that franchise. I really like the first one, for example, and I thought the Ezio ones kind of perfected it, and that was it. After that, I played Black Flag and enjoyed it, but it wasn't. After that, I kind of felt like, yeah, this is kind of run its course. I don't know what they're going to do differently with it anymore. I'm not sure if you played those or not, but
Yeah, I mean
yeah, you
the
played a couple of those, right?
yeah, I don't know. I don't know how I feel going back to them. I know that they ported them to the Switch, but I mean, I have very, very fond memories of the Ezio
Mm-hmm.
trilogy, and
Yeah,
just sort of
same.
the how they handled the growth of that character, how he changed over time,
Yeah,
that kind of stuff.
yeah,
And
yeah. It was pretty cool.
it got me to the point where I was like really excited for Assassin's Creed 3, and it was awful. Assassin's Creed 3 was
Yeah,
just so bad. And then I
yeah. It was
didn't, I mean,
pretty
I didn't
disappointing.
hate 4, but I also didn't really like 4 that much. And then after that, I mean, I haven't played an Assassin's Creed game since then.
So is Black Flag considered four?
Yeah, yeah, the full
That's the one with
titles,
the pirate ships,
yeah,
everything.
it's like Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's funny. I mean, sometimes I wear a T-shirt with the Black Flag symbol on the stream once in a while. It's still, but I don't remember which number it was or anything. I just remember, well, Black Flag was cool. It had a
Right,
cool logo.
right.
It's a fun game. But yeah. So yeah, it's funny because but the hope to me in games is mainly with indie developers now at this point. They're the ones that are trying a different random idea that a big studio won't risk anymore trying. Whereas when we
Sometimes,
were in the
yeah.
'90s, it was a little bit different in the '90s. It felt like studios were still trying random stuff, to see if it stick. I mean, that's how we got Smash Brothers
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Mario Party, for example, right? I mean, we got some of those really offshoot, kind of bizarre kind of games, and they're awesome now. But they're now tentpole kind of games, and like, what else are they gonna do? You know?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, these weird ideas become tentpole products, and it's kind of strange how that happens. I mean, the one thing I will say about indie games is, I mean, indie games have different problems, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things that I like about Among Us and Survivors and a couple other indie games is they're not like indie games have a big problem of getting up their own ass in terms of their own brilliance, right? I have found that a lot of
Mm-hmm.
indie game developers think that they're geniuses with no evidence that they are, and they make these
Mm-hmm.
meaningful, dark, deep games, and it's always about depression, or it's always about processing trauma, or it's always about the nature of existence and mortality, and you're like, okay, guys, get the fuck over yourself. Like there are other things to talk about in this world,
Yeah.
and I think a lot of indie developers, um, I don't know why. I have no idea why, but they really really have a bug up their ass about these very very particular things that they just keep hitting over and over and over and over again. And I honestly, for the most part, have completely abandoned the indie game space because they're all the same. Like, you play one walking simulator, you've basically played all walking simulators. And,
Mm-hmm.
and there'll be bright spots, there'll be interesting things from time to time, but I don't know. I think one of the things I like about Vampire Survivors is that it is really creative and it is really fun and interesting, and it feels like it's doing something kind of novel with things. I mean, it's not reinventing the wheel, it's just how they're combining the parts together, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's anymore. I mean, whether it's an indie game or a mainstream game, for the most part, like they're not really doing a lot of new interesting things a lot of the times. I mean, that's one of the many reasons why I don't see myself ever playing Tears of the Kingdom. I mean, in as much as anybody is able to give a sort of an analysis of the game where that aren't confirming their priors, right? The criticism is always like, well, this feels more like a $70 expansion pack, right? And like that's
Mm-hmm.
the biggest
Oh, really?
criticism.
Is that what they're saying?
Yeah, and a lot of reviews, it's like this feels like a $70 expansion pack.
Oh, okay.
It's a lot of the same content, a lot of the same visuals, a lot of the same graphics. They've added some more aspects to the world. They took out all of the superpowers from the first game and replaced it with a new set of superpowers in this one. But otherwise, it's like the game loop is basically identical. The visuals are identical. The yada yada yada. I mean, it's there's a lot of reuse from the first game, and that's fine, I guess. But like the problem is all the stuff that I hated in the first game is still in this one, right?
Yeah.
And it's just like, well, I guess that's what you get by kind of like. I mean, they played it safe to a certain extent, right? They didn't. They knew they had something with Breath of the Wild, and then they didn't want to jeopardize that, and so it. Honestly, Tears of the Kingdom is kind of a safe game. It's not revolutionary, really, And I mean, honestly, down to the mechanics, like all of that building stuff. I mean, I've done all that in 1,000 other games, right? And frankly, like I mean, based on what I've seen of it, Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts did that mechanics system way better than Tears of the Kingdom does. And it had more options. It had, the ability. It wasn't. I'm sorry. I'm getting a little distracted. I'm not clear-headed tonight. But anyway, so I'm gonna abandon this thread when I'm a little bit more cogent. Sorry, for anybody who doesn't know, I broke my toe yesterday.
So the throbbing pain is now creeping in and taking over your Banjo-Kazooie discussion. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, I took my foot was hurting really really badly before the stream, and so I took they gave me some actually like an opioid pain medication, which like Jesus Christ, like who does that anymore? So I took one before the stream, and I think it's just starting to hit me a little bit, and
okay.
I'm not as articulate and bitingly satirical as I usually am.
Well, on the flip side, I will say, I mean, going back to, well, first of all, yeah, I mean, we talked about this before the stream. Like, yeah, you're in pain, so you are playing injured tonight.
Yeah,
so,
right.
Yeah. Although you haven't really, but you've done a masterful job of just navigating through without anybody knowing until right now.
Yeah, right. When it was just like,
fine,
I'm having trouble like finding the words I want to say, but yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, it's
especially with Banjo-Kazooie, because you.
No, I know. Yeah. Nuts and Bolts is a great game, and I always, I mean, I ultimately discovered it when Rare did that Rare Replay thing for the Xbox One, and I got to rediscover it, and play it, and it was great. I mean, it was like, wow, I wish I had discovered this back when it originally came out. Yeah. It's just that Rare had kind of done a string of stinkers after they went and became a subsidiary of Microsoft, and I was sort of like, Perfect Dark Zero was not great, and Cameo was not great, and there was that may have been it, actually, and both of those games were not great, and honestly, they weren't batting 1,000 before that. I mean, Donkey Kong 64 was just a mess, right?
Yep.
And so, I was sort of like, well, they don't have a good track record, and Banjo-Tooie was kind of a mess, so I don't know that I want to, like, take a risk on this, and so I just didn't play it. But then when Rare Replay came out, I was like, oh, no time like the present. And it was like, wow, oh, shoot, this is really good, right? Oh, yeah, Viva Pinata 1 and 2. Those are another ones where it's like, I don't know who the audience for this game is, but it's, anyway, but yeah, Nuts and Bolts was phenomenal. And I wish I had discovered it back in the day when it first came out. But yeah,
I only played Banjo-Kazooie, the first one on the N64, and it just felt like so much 3D platforming. I just got worn out. It's a great game. I just didn't have the patience to keep going and finding those magical buzzard humanoid creatures all over the map and jigsaw puzzle pieces. I just got so burnt out of how much it felt like a really big game. Even to this day, I kind of get queasy thinking about, oh man, Banjo-Kazooie. I'll never play that game ever again because of how vast it felt at the time, But but I know plenty of people have finished it, like yourself. I know that you beat it and you loved it, and yeah, I just tip my hat off to the people that actually went through and played that game. So
yeah. I loved it. I for a long time really loved those kind of semi-open world collectathons, right? I think Donkey Kong 64 cured me of that, and I've never, and Nintendo has kind of they've always sort of maintained it to a certain extent, right? I mean, like they did Super Mario Sunshine, right? And then they did Super Mario Odyssey, but those are the only other two Mario games of that vein. Mario Galaxy and Mario 3D World, those are more like discrete stage-based games again, right? And so they were 3D platformers, but they weren't like here's a big giant world, go collect all the stars in the world. They were like, there is a beginning, middle, and end to this stage, and you can collect other things on the way. But I Mario Sunshine, I thought had some really, really clever, amazing ideas in it, but it was, I don't know, there were some ideas that were not good, and it got hamstrung. Although I do appreciate them, because most games, honestly, it's like you've got the grassland, you got the desert, you got the snowy mountains, you got the evil dungeon, the same old tropey environments. I really loved in Mario Odyssey how it's like, we're just going to do a resort vacation, and every stage is going to be inspired by some other aspect of a resort vacation. And it was like great. I mean, I was so on board with that. Like how awesome that they found a theme and they just built it out to its logical extremes. And so it is like they did the Super Mario 3D All-Stars. Again, I think it was during the pandemic. Like, there's a lot of stuff that came out of the pandemic. And so I got a chance to replay it then, and I'm like, oh wow, this is good. I mean, it's actually worth going back and rediscovering. Just don't try to 100% it. It's an annoying game to 100%.
Yeah, I have not played Mario Sunshine. I don't know what it was. I think it was a backpack thing. Something about it felt daunting to have to learn something. It felt such a new and different thing for Mario that it felt kind of intrusive. Like, I don't want to learn new stuff with Mario. I just want to be able to jump and run. And I don't like that Ghostbusters looking. It's not Ghostbusters, but that big giant water bottle thing on his back. I don't know if I like that. And so it felt, in a strange way, it felt like work. So I never picked it up. So, but maybe one of these days, if they remaster for the Switch, maybe I'll give it a shot. But yeah, and it could be just my preference in gaming myself. I love having big games are not a problem, but having little micro stages to kind of feel like you have a sense of finishing something, I think goes a long way, and that's what I like about Mario 3D World or new Super Mario Brothers. Like, all those games are fun because you feel like you're making little mini steps towards a bigger goal, instead of just throwing it out in the middle of nowhere like Breath of the Wild, or where it's a little bit more subtle as to how your steps are progressing throughout the game, and then it just opens up and the whole world's your sandbox. Go do stuff, and then you fall off cliffs and you don't know where to go. Like for me,
Yeah.
terrible at the game.
But then you
Yeah.
you liked Elden Ring though, right? So there's always like
Yeah.
there's always exceptions, right? And I'm guilty of this too. I'm not trying to throw you under the bus. Like I'll make these
No,
broad
no, it's okay.
proclamations, right? But I mean the reality is you can always find exceptions to every rule. But that's kind of what where it goes back to how the sum of the parts is always it has to be greater than the whole, right? So like most
Yeah.
of the open world 3D platformers, I don't like, but then Banjo-Kazooie and Mario Sunshine, Mario 64 and Mario Odyssey are all great. There's a million of them. Half of them came from Nintendo, but those are the only 4 that I liked.
Hmm.
And Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts was similar, but it was so different in terms of what the core mechanical loop was, like building the different vehicles to complete objectives. It really changed the whole nature of how you played the game, and in that sense, the larger open worlds really worked because they needed them to justify the vehicles that you were building, right?
Yeah.
And so but so that kind of feels like a different game to a certain extent, although ultimately you were still trying to collect jiggies and all that good jazz. But anyway, yeah, but it always is a matter of like I mean and this goes to everything. In general, I hate time travel stories, but there are always exceptions. Like Primer is phenomenal, right? It's maybe the best time travel serious hard sci-fi time travel movie ever made, and Back to the Future is classic, and so there's always exceptions. So yeah, I think I'm gonna have to call it quits. The medicine is starting to get on top of me a little bit. I apologize.
Just really making it fuzzy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm
We
losing.
need-
I'm
you
having
know,
trouble.
it's
I'm
funny.
losing my train of thought.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. We'll definitely revisit some of this
I mean,
stuff.
we've been going for 40
maybe
minutes,
this
so it's
weekend.
not like
Yeah.
we've not put in our time here on this one. So
Yeah. You left it. You know what? I mean, I know you hate sports, but you left it all on the floor tonight, Eric.
I know, I really
Out
did.
there.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So good job. But yeah, let's call it good for tonight. Just to wrap up real
Yeah, why
quick
don't we take a look
here.
at where you're at
I
on all
got
of this stuff real quick?
Yeah. So this pose is now pretty much done. I even got the little
Nice.
Drake rig, his little tunic to fall back down, and I'll work on this part next for next week,
Okay.
where he shakes it off. And that's kind of where we're at.
Very
and
cool.
we'll call it good.
Very cool. All right, looking good. Well, everybody, you can head on over to calamityjane.rocks. That'll take you to our Patreon site where you can please consider subscribing and helping us make this cartoon a reality. Also, obviously, we're on Facebook and YouTube. We're not doing Twitter anymore. We are talking about how we're going to move things around. We do have some ideas. We're in the process of doing some research to see how that's going to work out, so stay tuned to that. Otherwise, we'll be back at the same time next week. I don't think I have anything that's going to preclude me from showing up. So, good night, everybody, and stay safe out there. We'll see you next week.
Good night.